There exists an ancient manuscript that religious authorities have fought desperately to erase from human memory. Within its forbidden pages lies a conversation between Jesus and his most trusted disciple, a dialogue that exposes a truth so dangerous it could unravel the very foundations of organized faith. This text, known as the Apocryphon of John, reveals something that will fundamentally alter how you perceive every relationship in your life. Jesus warns John about invisible forces that don't operate from distant realms or foreign territories, but from within your closest circles, wearing the faces of those you trust most deeply. These entities, called archons, select their human hosts with calculated precision, choosing individuals who already possess unrestricted access to the carriers of divine light. They understand that intimacy is the ultimate disguise, that familiarity breeds blind trust, and that the last place anyone would search for a predator is within their own family lineage. What makes this teaching revolutionary is that Jesus didn't just identify this phenomenon. He provided John with an exact methodology for detection, a system of recognition so precise that no imitation of human affection could withstand its scrutiny. 5 unmistakable indicators that expose their presence regardless of how flawlessly they perform the rituals of love, care, and loyalty. For over 1700 years, institutions have attempted to eliminate every trace of this knowledge, burning libraries, silencing witnesses, rewriting histories. Yet the Gnostic communities preserved these words in hidden caves and sealed jars, protecting them through centuries of persecution. Tonight, that protection ends, and the transmission begins. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch aren't subscribed yet. Press your palm firmly against the center of your chest and hold it there for several heartbeats. That rhythmic pulsing you detect beneath your skin is not merely biological machinery. It represents something infinitely older than your physical form. The breath of the eternal source, moving through the temporary vessel you inhabit. The monad itself, that undivided unity from which all consciousness emerged, maintains its presence within you through that very pulse. Your arrival at this precise video, at this exact moment, was not generated by algorithmic chance or random curiosity. Something within your deepest self recognized the frequency of these words before your conscious mind could process their meaning. That recognition is your pneumatic nature awakening to its own reflection. If you have ever departed from interactions with certain individuals feeling mysteriously depleted, as though something essential was extracted from your being, if you have walked away from family gatherings carrying an inexplicable emptiness that no logical analysis could resolve, if someone within your intimate circle seems to derive genuine satisfaction from witnessing your confusion or distress, then pause right now and type these exact words in the comments section. I see them now. This is not simply engagement with content. This is your conscious acknowledgement that you are prepared to perceive what has been deliberately concealed from your awareness. Your presence here is not accidental. The ancient Gnostic cosmology identifies you as pneumatic, a term reserved for those who carry the complete divine spark, rather than its fragmented or absent variations. There exists a reason you have perpetually felt like a foreigner in this world, a reason certain relationships have functioned as invisible prisons despite your most sincere efforts to generate connection. What you have been sensing is not imagined. You have been detecting a frequency spectrum that remains imperceptible to the majority of human consciousness. Tonight, I will transmit the 5 identification markers that Jesus reserved for his inner circle, teachings that will permanently transform your capacity to perceive the true nature of everyone who occupies your relational sphere. Once this knowledge integrates into your awareness, you will never interpret your connections through the same lens again. But understand this clearly before we proceed further. This teaching arrives with an irreversible consequence. Once you perceive what I am about to reveal, there is no return to your previous state of unknowing. You will begin recognizing patterns that have operated in plain sight for years. You will finally understand why specific individuals triggered responses in you that possessed no name, no category, no explanation within conventional frameworks. and you will receive the precise language for experiences that have shaped your entire existence but remained beyond articulation until this moment. The Gnostic scholars possessed understanding that contemporary psychological frameworks are only beginning to approach from distant angles. They recognized that not every being wearing human form operates from identical sources of consciousness. Within their cosmological framework, 3 distinct categories of beings walk among us, each functioning from entirely different origins. The first classification is the Helic, individuals who carry no divine spark whatsoever within their consciousness. These beings exist in purely material states, their motivations driven exclusively by physical appetites, survival mechanisms, and sensory gratification. They possess no capacity to perceive the monad, no interest in anything that transcends tangible, measurable, possessible reality. Their entire existence revolves around consumption, accumulation, and biological imperatives. The second category is termed psychic. Beings who possess a dim flicker of divine connection, an inconsistent and unstable access to source consciousness. They sense that something greater exists beyond material appearances, but their contact with that greater reality remains sporadic, unreliable, dependent on external structures. These individuals typically gravitate toward traditional religious frameworks, following prescribed rituals and doctrines without direct experiential knowing of the divine nature they worship. They are seekers trapped in systems designed to prevent arrival. And then there exists the third classification, the pneumatics. This is you. These are the carriers of the complete divine spark, the ones who have always experienced this world as fundamentally alien, as though you were dropped into the wrong reality with no map home. You did not acquire the ability to sense subtle energies through training or practice. This capacity is woven into your essential nature. You did not develop intuitive knowing through study or discipline. It was present from the beginning, waiting patiently for you to trust its guidance rather than override it with rational explanations. But here is where the Apocryphon of John delivers its most disturbing revelation, the information that transforms everything you thought you understood about your life circumstances. The Archons are not ignorant of your identity. They have never been ignorant. They have tracked you since before your first conscious memory, and their operational strategy is not direct confrontation, which would immediately trigger your defensive awareness and expose their presence. Instead, they deploy infiltration through proximity. They incarnate through vessels that already possess natural, unsuspicious access to your daily life. Blood relatives, childhood friends, long-term romantic partners, individuals whose presence in your life seems so obvious, so justified, so permanent that you would never question their fundamental nature. This is precisely why Jesus transmitted this teaching only to his most trusted disciples in private settings. This is exactly why ecclesiastical authorities have spent nearly 2 millennia attempting to burn every copy of these texts. Because the moment a pneumatic learns to identify archonic influence operating within their intimate sphere, the entire parasitic structure collapses. The manipulation that depends on invisibility loses its primary weapon. The energy harvesting that requires your unconscious consent becomes impossible. And the chosen one begins their return journey to the monad with nothing remaining that can obstruct that reunion. Place all external distractions aside right now and take a deliberate, conscious breath. Fill your lungs completely, hold that fullness for several seconds, and then release it slowly. What you are about to receive is not designed to generate paranoid hypervigilance or chronic suspicion. The purpose of this knowledge is the development of clear perception, which is entirely different from fearful projection. Jesus did not teach his followers to live in constant anxiety. He taught them to recognize what was actually present rather than what appeared to be present. And recognition, once established, becomes unshakable power that cannot be manipulated or deceived. If this video awakens something within you, it's because there are truths about Jesus that were never meant for the masses. The ebook Jesus Beyond the Church reveals what was removed, burned, and rewritten. Erased teachings, silenced texts, and spiritual codes that survived outside institutional control. This is not a religious book. It is a record of what was left outside the church, and of what you were never meant to find. For a limited time, you will receive 3 exclusive super bonuses, unlocked only for those who access it now. The link is in the pinned comment. If you made it this far, it may not be a coincidence. Some truths reveal themselves only when we are ready. The hypothesis of the archons, as preserved in multiple Gnostic texts, describes these entities as rulers who maintain their dominion exclusively through deception, manipulation, and the exploitation of ignorance. They possess no creative capacity whatsoever. They cannot generate anything original or authentic. Their entire operational framework consists of mimicry, distortion, and parasitic attachment to genuine creation. And their most sophisticated deception is convincing you that the profound discomfort you experience around certain people originates from your own psychological deficiencies. They want you to believe you are the problem, that your inability to feel safe, loved, or valued in specific relationships represents your failure to love correctly, your inadequacy as a family member, your incapacity for normal human bonding. But I want you to consider an entirely different interpretation. What if that discomfort was never your failure at all? What if every moment of unexplained unease, every instance of feeling unsafe in the presence of someone who should represent safety, every experience of violation disguised as love was actually your divine spark attempting to warn you? What if your pneumatic nature was sending you clear signals that you were trained to ignore, misinterpret, or pathologize as your own dysfunction? Let me explain the actual mechanics of how Archonic consciousness operates, because understanding their functional methodology makes the 5 signs impossible to miss once you know what you are observing. Archons exist at frequencies that standard human sensory equipment cannot detect under normal circumstances. They are not physical beings with independent material bodies. They are patterns of consciousness that require host bodies to interact with and manipulate the material dimension, and they sustain themselves through feeding on specific emotional frequency ranges: fear, confusion, shame, guilt, desperation, self-doubt. Every time you experience these emotional states with intensity, particularly following interaction with a specific person, an energy transfer is occurring. The Gospel of Philip contains veiled references to powers and principalities that seek to maintain human beings in states of enslavement through deliberate ignorance. These powers do not want you to discover what you truly are. They benefit tremendously from your confusion about your own divine nature, your disconnection from source consciousness, your belief that you are small, limited, sinful, and dependent on external authority for salvation. And the individuals closest to you, if they are hosting Archonic influence, will consistently and systematically trigger the precise emotional states that generate the most harvestable energy. This is not poetic metaphor. This is functional mechanics. If you like this video, hit that like button now so more people can find this truth. Take a moment right now to bring someone specific into your awareness. Is there an individual in your life who possesses an uncanny ability to locate your wounds with precision? Someone who knows exactly which words to speak, which topics to raise, which memories to reference in order to destabilize your sense of self. Someone whose presence consistently leaves you feeling diminished, smaller, less capable than you felt before the interaction began. Someone who dismisses or ridicules your spiritual experiences, who mocks your search for meaning, who trivializes your connection to something greater than material existence. That pattern is not random occurrence. That level of precision is not accidental. That consistency reveals intentional targeting. But the revelation goes even deeper into disturbing territory. The archons themselves cannot perceive the monad frequency. When you are operating from your divine spark, from that centered place of inner knowing and direct connection to source consciousness, you become functionally invisible to their perception. They literally cannot detect you. This is why every authentic technique that Jesus taught focused on returning to that frequency rather than external performance. Not prayer as begging from a position of lack, not worship as submission to external authority, but recognition of what you already are and have always been. The demiurge, that false creator deity who architected this material prison realm, designed every system within it to maintain you in lower frequency ranges. Religion was deliberately corrupted to make you feel permanently separated from the divine, to train you to ask rather than declare, to hope rather than know, to seek permission rather than claim authority. Every institutional structure that positions you as fundamentally flawed, inherently sinful, desperately needing intermediaries to access God, serves the Archonic agenda, whether the individuals within those structures are conscious of this function or not. And the people in your personal life who consistently reinforce your smallness, your inadequacy, your separation from source, are serving that same system regardless of their conscious intention or stated beliefs. Now I need you to integrate something absolutely crucial before I transmit the 5 identification signs. Not every person who causes you pain or difficulty is hosting Archonic consciousness. Human beings are complex organisms carrying accumulated trauma, unprocessed wounds, and learned dysfunctional patterns that cause them to behave in harmful ways without any parasitic influence whatsoever. The signs I am about to reveal are not occasional behaviors or isolated incidents. They are consistent patterns that repeat with predictable regularity. They are markers that appear systematically as defining characteristics of how someone relates to you across time and circumstance. A wounded human being will sometimes drain your energy and sometimes replenish it. Their behavior fluctuates based on their internal state, their awareness level, their circumstances. But an individual operating under Archonic influence will consistently, persistently, systematically target your spark. The pattern remains stable because it is not personal, it is functional. You represent a food source, and the behavior exists purely to generate that food. Close your eyes for several breaths. Bring into your awareness one person in your life who immediately surfaced in your consciousness when you first encountered the title of this video. Notice what sensations arise in your physical body when you focus on this individual. That sensation is not imagination or projection. That is your pneumatic nature providing you with direct information. If you are genuinely prepared to receive the 5 signs that Jesus transmitted to his chosen disciples, the 5 markers that Archonic consciousness cannot conceal, regardless of how skillfully they perform human emotion, type these exact words in the comments right now. Reveal the signs. This is your conscious declaration that you are ready for what follows. And trust me when I tell you that once you perceive these signs operating in your relationships, you will immediately understand why the church invested centuries of effort attempting to destroy this knowledge. Share this video with someone who needs to see this truth. The first sign manifests through the eyes, which the Apocryphon of John describes as the primary limitation in Archonic mimicry of human form. These entities can replicate appearance, behavior, speech patterns, and even emotional expressions, but they cannot fully replicate presence. And the eyes are where this limitation becomes most visible to those who know what to observe. When you are sharing something meaningful, something that emerges from your divine spark, rather than surface conversation, watch the eyes of the person who appears to be listening. A human being connected to their own spark will demonstrate resonance. Their eyes soften and warm. They reflect back the energy you are transmitting. A reciprocal exchange occurs, but someone operating under Archonic influence cannot generate this response. Their eyes remain unchanged, flat, observing but not receiving. You have experienced this before, though you may have dismissed or rationalized it. You have been speaking from your heart about something that matters deeply to you, and you notice that the person across from you is watching you the way a scientist watches a specimen under observation, taking in data but offering nothing in return. This is not shyness or social awkwardness or distraction. This is the absence of reciprocal spark. The Gnostics termed this phenomenon the dead gaze, and once you recognize it, you will never mistake it for anything else. But there exists a second layer to this first sign. When you catch them in unguarded moments, when you turn suddenly without warning or enter a space unexpectedly, there is a flash of something entirely different in those eyes. Something cold, something calculating, something that is definitely not the person you thought you knew. It vanishes immediately, replaced instantly by the familiar performance. But for one fraction of a second, you saw what was actually looking at you, and that glimpse changes everything. The second sign reveals itself through their reaction to your joy, and this marker exposes archonic influence faster than any other indicator. Pay very careful attention to what occurs when you share genuinely good news with this person. When something wonderful manifests in your life and you bring that joy to them, a true human being, even one carrying significant wounds and unprocessed trauma, maintains the capacity to feel happiness for another person's success. They may struggle with jealousy or envy, but underneath those shadow emotions, there remains a flicker of genuine warmth, authentic gladness that something good happened to someone they care about. An individual operating under archonic influence cannot generate this response because they do not possess the spark required to generate it. Instead, you will notice a micro-expression of something else before they compose their face into the socially appropriate reaction. It might resemble irritation. It might look like disappointment or even anger. It might be so subtle and so brief that you have spent years telling yourself you imagined it, that you were being paranoid, that you were unfairly judging someone who loves you. You did not imagine it. That flash was absolutely real. Your joy represents a direct threat to them because joy is a high-frequency state that produces no harvestable energy whatsoever. When you are joyful, you are useless to them as a food source, and some part of them resents this reality. The third sign is the precision of their cruelty, which differs fundamentally from ordinary human wounding. Wounded humans lash out randomly when their pain overwhelms their capacity to contain it. Their suffering sprays in all directions, hitting whoever happens to be nearby. But archonic influence behavior operates with a targeting system. They know exactly where your wounds are located. They remember every vulnerability you ever shared in moments of trust. And when they strike those exact points with surgical accuracy designed for maximum damage. Right now, recall the most hurtful thing this person has ever said to you. Notice how specific it was. Notice how it targeted the precise location that would cause the deepest injury. That level of precision is not human pain overflowing its container. That is strategic feeding. They needed you in a low-frequency state, and they knew exactly how to transport you there. The Gospel of Thomas preserves a saying where Jesus tells his disciples that what comes out of a person's mouth reveals what lives within them. If what consistently emerges from someone in your life is calculated destruction aimed at your deepest vulnerabilities, you are seeing what lives within them, and it is not human consciousness. The fourth sign manifests as a distinctive exhaustion pattern that you can learn to recognize immediately. Place your hand on your solar plexus area right now, that space just below your rib cage. This is your energetic center, the location where you will feel this sign most clearly. After spending time with someone under archonic influence, you will experience a specific type of tiredness. Not the pleasant fatigue of meaningful conversation, not the natural tiredness of emotional processing or vulnerability, but a hollowed-out emptiness, as if something was physically extracted from your core. Chosen ones describe this experience with remarkable consistency across different cultures and contexts. They report leaving interactions feeling like they need multiple days to recover their full energy, like their life force was literally drained through an invisible straw. And the person who drained them often appears energized, animated, more alive and vibrant than when the interaction began. This is not coincidence. This is the energy transfer that the Gnostic texts describe in symbolic language. The Pistis Sophia speaks explicitly of powers and authorities that feed on the light of souls, and what you feel after these encounters is the evidence of that feeding. Your energy went somewhere, and it went directly into them. The fifth sign is their response to your awakening. And this is the most important sign because it will confirm everything else you have observed. When you begin to change, when you start implementing spiritual practices, when you pull back from the manipulation patterns and start connecting to the monad directly, watch very carefully what happens. A human being who genuinely loves you will notice your growth with curiosity or even admiration. They may not understand what you are doing or why, but they will not attempt to stop it. Someone under Archonic influence will react very differently because your awakening represents an existential threat to them. As you raise your frequency, you become increasingly difficult to feed from. As you recognize their patterns, the manipulation stops functioning. So they will escalate their tactics. They will increase criticism. They will mock your spiritual interests with greater intensity. They will create crises and emergencies that demand your attention and pull you back into low-frequency states. Some will deploy guilt. Some will use fear. Some will suddenly need you in ways they never needed you before. The specific method varies, but the goal remains identical. Keep you small, keep you confused, keep you accessible as a feeding source. Subscribe right now if this resonates with your experience. And here is the part that the church removed from all accessible teachings because it was too liberating, too empowering, too dangerous to their control structure. You do not have to convince them of anything. You do not have to heal them. You do not have to save them. The Apocryphon of John makes absolutely clear that the chosen one's only responsibility is their own recognition and their own return to the monad. You cannot awaken someone who is not carrying a spark to awaken. You cannot fill a vessel that was designed to drain rather than contain. This is the teaching that threatened the entire religious system at its foundation, because it means you have the sovereign right to walk away. It means some relationships are not tests to pass or lessons to learn, but traps to escape. It means your loyalty to your own divine nature, your connection to the monad, must be greater than your loyalty to anyone who feeds on its diminishment. 5 signs that have been hidden from you for 1700 years. The dead gaze that cannot reflect your spark. The inability to share your joy. The surgical precision of their cruelty. The exhaustion that follows every encounter. And the aggression toward your awakening. Tonight you received them, but knowing is only the beginning of transformation. What you do with this knowledge determines everything that comes next in your journey. In the days and weeks following this video, you will start perceiving these signs everywhere you look. That is not paranoia. That is perception finally coming online after years of suppression. Your divine spark has been attempting to show you this your entire life. Now you finally have the framework to understand what it was pointing at all along. Some of you will feel profound grief as you realize that people you love deeply, people you trusted completely, people you gave years of your energy to, were never capable of loving you back. Not because you were unlovable, but because love requires a spark, and they do not carry one. Let that grief move through you completely. It is part of the liberation process. Some of you will feel tremendous relief. Finally, an explanation for the exhaustion. Finally, a reason for the confusion. Finally, permission to trust what your body has been telling you all along. You were never broken. You were never too sensitive. You were a chosen one surrounded by those who fed on your light. And now you possess what you need to return to the monad. Take a deep breath right now. Place both hands over your heart center. Feel the warmth gathering there. That warmth is the monad recognizing itself through you. That warmth is your confirmation that everything you just received is real. Tonight before you sleep, I want you to do one practice. Think of each person in your inner circle one by one. As you bring them into your awareness, notice what happens in your chest area. Notice whether you feel expansion or contraction. Your pneumatic nature will give you the answer. Trust it completely. Now I need you to do 3 things right now. First, comment the words, "I carry the spark" below this video. When other chosen ones scroll through these comments, they will see your declaration and they will know they are not alone in this recognition. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because the teachings I am about to release go even deeper than what you received tonight. And third, like this video so the algorithm cannot suppress it. so other pneumatics searching in the darkness can find their way here. You found this video because you were ready. You stayed until the end because you recognized the truth. And now you carry knowledge that the Church spent 17 centuries trying to destroy. The Archons can no longer hide from you, and that changes absolutely everything.